Welcome to Maximal Being,
a podcast devoted to ditching fad diets and using real science to get you healthy and feeling great.
I'm Doc Mock, a GI and functional medicine doctor who harnesses the power of gut health to get you achieving your goals.
And I'm Jacky P, a well-informed layman who challenges the experts and asks the questions that you want.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button or leave a comment.
And now, on to the show. Hello, Maximal Beings. It is I, Jacky P, hopefully your top 5 layman out in these streets. I am here with, of course, the co-hostess with the mostest, Doc Mock. Doc Mock, how are you this beautiful day?
I am enjoying the sunshine. I mean, it is like 24/7 sunshine down here. My vitamin D levels are sky high, feeling the love. How about you, Jacky P?
It's been raining, but guess what? It's shining in my heart, and that's where it really matters, right?
That's right.
I'm just excited. We have a great guest here, right? Founder and CEO of Blokes, right? A telehealth company, right? It's dedicated to men's health, but I don't think it's just a telehealth company, right? The mission and the passion that Mr. Josh Whalen here has that I've seen on his stuff is just, I think it's very motivating, and I'm very excited to talk about your journey, your story, and everything you bring to the table. So, Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm phenomenal. I'm in sunny Colorado, man. More sunshine than Florida, Doc.
That's true.
Yeah, I got a lot of vitamin D, so we're in the same boat, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Wonderful. Yeah, everyone's going to rub in the sunshine, but it's okay. My sunshine's on the inside. I'm taking it with me.
Paleo, keto, vegan, and carnivore. Maybe you've tried them all, but did you have success? Are you still doing that diet? Turns out there's not just one diet right for one particular person. By understanding how your body works and the relationship behind your body's workings and these diets, you can then approach the perfect plan for you. In the Perfect Human Diet course, we talk to you about your body's inner workings and the pros and cons of each plan. We discuss how our ancestors ate and have eaten, and lay a framework to tailoring a plan that is perfect for you. To learn more about the Perfect Human Diet course, head to maximalbeing.com/courses to find out more. And as always, I'm Doc Mock, and I'm here to maximize your health. You cannot supplement your way to health, but there are things that we need to add to our lives that can maximize our pathway to wellness. The American diet is virtually devoid of omega-3 fatty acids, which play a major role in cardiovascular disease, gut permeability, and mental health. Personally, I take omega-3s every night, and iHerb is the best place for clean, natural sources of supplements. I love the ZenWise omega-3 fatty acid supplement, which is free of fish burps and good for the environment. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/iHerb, that's IHERB, and enter the code B as in boy, D as in dog, B as in boy, 5528, and receive 10% off your orders for all supplements. Maximize your supplements with iHerb.
So as everyone, if you're listening to the first time, welcome. I'm Jacky P. I am your layman. I'm going to make sure that Josh and Doc Mock don't talk in crazy jargon that we can't keep up, right? And Doc Mock?
What's going on, everybody? Doc Mock here with Maximal Being Podcast. I am a therapeutic endoscopist, which is a fancy GI doctor that removes cancers endoscopically, and I am also a functional medicine provider. Back to you, Jacky P.
And now to the main event, right? So, Josh, right? You like everyone on our show, we have a great story, right? Take some time. Tell us a little bit how did we get from Josh, was it 13, 14 years ago, to the Josh we know today, who's leading this wonderful company. All right. Let's hear your origin story.
Sure, man. I've been in healthcare for 14 years. Got my start with a med device company called Stryker. May have heard of it. Big orthopedic implant company, big surgical company. Was with those guys for about 5 years. And then I thought the grass might be greener on the entrepreneurial side of healthcare. And I've been doing that ever since. I've done everything from owning and operating medical device distributorships to regenerative medicine clinics, to pharmacies, to laboratories, And now we're on to our newest and I think our best next venture, which is Blokes, modern men's health, all telehealth based. And we just recently launched our women's line called Joy, J-O-I, and we're super excited. It's something we're super passionate about. And it started just out of my personal journey with hormones.
Wonderful. That's exciting to know, because, you know, that was going to be one of my questions, right? Men's health is important, but what about the ladies, right? So, Josh, good on you.
All goes on hand in hand, doesn't it?
Yeah, amen to that. So Josh, tell me a little bit about, you know, what was it that you saw in, you know, the industry, or just what was available that made you really like say, hey, you know what, there's a gap here.
Yeah.
Right. And one, you know, what did you see that made you feel that way? But also, what made you think that, hey, you know what, I'm going to fill that gap?
Yeah, I think we should start like maybe even a few years ago, before Blokes was even in existence. I battled with hormones. My wife and I had tons of fertility issues, and Doc Mock can even attest to this, but most guys don't know, when the wife is going through pregnancy, there's a lot that can happen to the men, especially with their testosterone levels, even their cortisol levels, prolactin, estrogen levels. But my testosterone tanked during that process. And during that, my wife's like, hey, dude, you got to get your shit together. Your sex drive sucks. You're kind of all over the place. You're gaining weight. And I started doing this journey on my own. I went and saw a couple of primary care docs. Unfortunately, I got really bad guidance and bad advice. I was testing well below even the national average. And that's when I kind of started seeing that opportunity. I finally found a functional medicine doctor that was specialized in TRT and hormone optimization. And he got me on my path to feeling like a much better man. I just turned 40 about 2 weeks ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm actually celebrating up in Aspen this weekend. So I'm super
great.
pumped. Totally. But, you know, it was born out of my personal journey. You know, it was not a very pleasant experience for me going and seeing these primary care docs, knowing something was off while being told completely the opposite, even though my labs at the time were even showing that I was off. You know, so I just wanted to make the experience a lot easier, a lot more simple, while talking to experts in the field.
That's amazing. I mean, I feel like you're not alone out there. You know, I just gave a talk in New Orleans to a bunch of providers. And one of the things that we talked about is the statistic that on average, a healthcare provider will interrupt their patient within the first 30 seconds of seeing them. That's pretty amazing, right? And on the other side of it, if you listen to your patients, they will tell you usually the answer behind what is going on with them. Now, we don't want to place the blame totally on healthcare providers, right? The system is such that we're rewarded based upon the number of patients that we see and not necessarily the quality of the visit. So something needs to happen to improve the quality. But I'm going to get off my soapbox and let's get back to talking about hormones. And I just wanted to thank you so much for being so upfront with your personal story. I mean, it takes bravery to just, you know, be upfront with that. So thank you.
You know, it's become part of the mantra in terms of my overall goal. When I first got into this, it was obviously a personal journey. And then I started really seeing changes. I started working out a lot more. I started, you know, just being a better dad, a better, you know, husband, a better friend, just having more energy. And now it's become this contagious thing where I'm just like, every man should feel the way I should feel. And there's options, right? I mean, you're starting to see TRT talked about a lot more, and I think rightfully so. But the experience has to be good for the patient, and it's got to be welcoming. And it's unfortunate that, you know, we see, you know, clinics and doctors do stuff like that, and they don't give a lot of time to patients. And that's something that we're trying to change.
I feel like sex is like the thing we don't talk about, right? Like even in medical school, it's kind of like men's health, kind of important, next class, you know, like we kind of bridge over it a little bit, but like garbage in, garbage out, right? The American Urologic Society, in terms of how they test a man for low testosterone, you know, asks you to test free, sometimes total testosterone levels, but there's more to that picture, right? You know, testosterone is bound to sex hormone binding globulin, and so much about your stress level, Other conditions like HIV can alter the amount of that binding globulin. And if you have less of the binding globulin, you have more free T. And so your testosterone will be either higher than expected, but it's not necessarily a functioning testosterone as well.
You
So
got
there's
it.
so much more to the picture here. And it all depends upon the way that you test people.
Yeah, and you know, Doc, that a blood sample is just a snap in that one instance, right? I mean, there's so many things that go beyond that. I mean, symptoms are a very, very big factor. And, you know, no two patients the same. One guy may test out at, you know, a high testosterone level by called the standard deviation, but feel like crap, and vice versa, you know? So there's a lot that goes into it that are outside of blood draws and looking at labs. There's a lot that goes into symptoms and really evaluating the patient.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, you can't look at it in a vacuum either, right? Like you talked about, your stress levels went up, your testosterone went down. That's called the cortisol steal, right? Jacky P, we were kind of like talking about this a little bit. When you have the cortisol steal, when stress goes up, all of your hormones preferentially shunt in the cortisol pathway towards your stress hormones, cortisol, which makes you retain water, makes your sugars go up, makes you gain weight and lose muscle mass. And so stress is a major impact on that.
That's such a good point. You know, it was shocking for me. I had to get in this side of the business to understand what happens to the man's body when your wife or your partner's going through pregnancy. And I know, you know, through those 4 miscarriages, I was just a train wreck inside, and I didn't even know what was going on.
Wow.
And it's unfortunate that, you know, men and women aren't aligned in that knowledge, or the OBGYNs even telling the wife to say, hey, you might want to check your husband, you know, how's your sex life, what's going on there. But there's a lot of things that I think as a whole, we need to start collectively getting out and spreading the word.
Absolutely. Jacky P, I know I'm kind of like running the show here. I didn't mean to take over. I mean, do you want to chime in here to talk about testosterone? Or?
Listen, I love the conversation already. I feel like I'm an audience member once upon a time, once again. So it's wonderful. But you know me, I've got questions, Doc Mock. I question a lot of things. And I think there's so many things that Josh said that I'd like to definitely touch on. And I think the first thing I think we should do is just really maybe back up and like look at a high level view of just like testosterone, right? Because the layman like me, the dude I am, I always think like, oh, testosterone, beard on my face, hair on my chest, muscles, right?
Yeah.
And then that's pretty much it. That's all I need it for. But, you know, based off the conversation I've been listening to and a couple things that we talked about before this call, right? I think, you know, we should probably talk a little bit more about how it impacts men's health and also women's health, right? You know, everyone just thinks testosterone is a man's thing. It's everyone's thing. So, you know, like, you know, Josh, I'd love to hear, you know, your experience when, you know, you touched on it briefly, but, you know, maybe something you've seen with what you're doing now and, you know, how someone like, let's say for myself, right, let's say I'm having some troubles and I kind of need that, you know, extra help, you know, what would you do in that situation?
I mean, the first thing to do is see a qualified physician that specializes in hormone optimization. And, you know, I think guys need to check the ego a little bit, right? I mean, it's okay to experience these symptoms. Guys tend to compartmentalize a lot of this stuff. They don't want to talk about it. They're tough. And, but you know, there's definitely options and releases, but make sure you're talking to somebody who's qualified in the hormone space. It would be like me going to a neurosurgeon for my knee. I mean, hormones have become so specialized. And you want to make sure you're seeing somebody that's like a functional medicine expert or somebody who's A4M qualified, somebody that knows their stuff on this. Because, you know, going to my experience, for example, going to a primary care doc that really didn't specialize in hormone optimization, I said testosterone, he almost thought it was a bad word, you know. So going to somebody who braces that type of therapy, but being open and just talking about that stuff. And, you know, sex is a big thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of things beyond testosterone that can help with brain fog, weight management, sex drive, just overall drive. You know, I got to tell you, one of the things that helped me the most was just this constant brain fog that I had before I didn't even know I had it. It's just, I had lived with it for such a long time. And then I got my hormones optimized, and oh my God, it was like light at the end of the tunnel. So there's a lot of different things, but I think if you're just open about it, talk to the right people, find the experts, regardless of whether it's blokes, and just, take that next step.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really valuable point, is that, neurologic health is directly correlated with the health of our hormones as well. For women, there's a ton of medical literature that supports hormone replacement therapy to prevent delayed onset, dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And so it is a consideration for people that have menopause or menopausal symptoms, and also have a high risk, like a family history of dementia. My approach, and I am not a hormone specialist by any means. I'm not an endocrinologist, but again, the functional medicine training, you think about these things. But
totally.
But women and men that are kind of that, if we're looking at anthropometrics, like the body fat percentages, the people that are that pear shape, I tend to think about hormones as one of the primary mediators behind that weight gain. And I feel like as a society, we blame people for just, eating too much, not having enough self-control, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes you can't help it. And we see that a lot in our women clients. They've had some sort of event, change in their hormones, and then they just cannot, despite what they do, lose the weight. Look to the hormones. You got to do advanced hormonal testing.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird domino effect, right, Doc? I mean, the conundrum, or the chicken and the egg, it's the weight gain or the hormones, or the hormones or the weight gain. And if you're having a ton of weight issues, it's likely derived from hormones. But we deal with this every day. I mean, patients that are having weight issues, their hormones are typically off, but it started with just a ton of different issues. So yeah, it's kind of this weird circle of life with hormones.
What's going on, Maximal Beings? It's Doc Mock here. Many of you are returning to the gym now, but some are not going back. Regardless of what you plan, Rogue has got the right gear to fit your needs. I personally own a barbell set and love it. The Black Ops shorts are sweat resistant and flexible for getting deep in your squats. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/rogue for our referral link. Order 3 items and they ship for free. And as usual, it's Doc Mock, and I'm here to maximize your pathway to wellness. If you're stuck at home and cannot make it to the grocery store, delivery may be the best way to stay clean and healthy. Instacart is the national leader in the direct-to-home delivery service. With numerous major chains and food from smaller stores, you can get those local veggies sent directly to your doorstep. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/Instacart and maximize your nutrition today.
Just backtracking to how we make hormones, the most important cofactor for hormones for the listeners out there is the ugly word cholesterol, right?
Ooh.
For years, we have demonized cholesterol, like that, right? Your doctor, you see your doctor, they check your cholesterol. Oh, your cholesterol's high. You have to go on a low-fat diet, right? And Jacky P, you're gonna probably roll your eyes that I'm talking about Ansel Keys again, but Josh, I don't know if you know Ansel Keys, but he's this guy that led the low-fat charge back in the 70s and 80s with this study called the 7 Countries Study, where basically he just retrospectively took a bunch of charts from all over the world and said, low-fat diet's good for your heart. And people challenged him for years, and instead of actually allowing them to present their evidence, he would just bully them, right? And he had the voice of our government. So they just kind of said, okay, I guess we'll just keep doing this low fat thing. So fast forward to 2022, and we are more obese than ever. And actually, your state was the last state to hold out on high obesity numbers. Finally, they caved. So,
and how bad is Colorado?
Better than everywhere else, but still,
yeah.
But approaching national averages of around 40% or so obesity.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? About 42%. Is that the national obesity rate?
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, you need your cholesterol, right? You need to eat fats. You need to eat. So I'm not telling everybody like go out and eat a pizza or a giant block of cheese, like get your fats from healthy sources, but you need cholesterol to make your hormones. So Jacky P, go ahead, Josh.
I was going to ask you, Doc, one thing that typically happens too when a patient, let's say traditional medicine, they go see a doc, their cholesterol's off. One of the first things I have a question on actually is they tell them to stop eating salt. And there's so much literature now out there about good salt. I mean, I definitely agree with the bad salts, right? Like the Morton's right out of the blue box or something, but what are your thoughts on that kind of overall messaging that so many providers are telling patients?
Oh man, you just asked such a complicated question, but there are certain patients that would benefit from a low salt approach, and those are people that retain fluid. So people with congestive heart failure, people with who are on dialysis, people in my world that have cirrhosis and have fluid around their belly. Those people do benefit with amazing evidence of a low salt approach. But
that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but in terms of the rest of cardiovascular risk, this actually ping-ponged when I was undergoing my internal medicine training. So we were taught low sodium diet mitigate cardiovascular risk, or the DASH diet, right? But there was a study that came out when I was in training that kind of said the DASH diet doesn't really work so good, but people kind of glossed over it and kept saying that like low salt mantra just because they didn't know any better. There's more to the DASH diet, but I agree. You need some salt. You need salt to maintain your blood pressure in a healthy person.
Sure.
Yeah. And that again comes down to hormones, right? Aldosterone is the hormone that helps us to collect salt and hang on to it. So, it's a very, very important hormone for maintaining our blood pressure. Jacky.
And I'd like to add to that, definitely nothing about the health or nutrition side, but just to reiterate on a previous episode when we talked about plastics. So if you're out there keeping track of salt, you've got a salt grind or something, make sure the salt you're getting doesn't have plastic in it.
Yeah.
So,
Good
little
point.
Plug from another episode.
No, and also in relation to the hormone topic, like, what are your thoughts, Josh, about plastics and environmental toxins on our hormone levels?
Well,
BPAs, right?
I think we need to be studying this dramatically, and I think there's a ton of environmental factors, and it's clear in just overall labs how men's testosterone levels have changed over the last 30, 40 years. And there's no doubt that the environment is playing some type of role in that. And there's no doubt that just internal mechanisms such as stress, guys are playing video games at a higher rate. Guys are smoking pot at a higher rate. I mean, the accessibility of that stuff. And that's all just, one big contributing factor to men's testosterone levels being so much lower.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the evidence behind the impact of BPAs on our hormone levels is pretty good, both in humans and animal data. And there are BPA-free plastics, but it is hard to really guarantee that that plastic is 100% BPA. But that absolutely can cause what's called aromatization of our hormones, where we shift. We're getting to the testosterone step. Okay, right? We've already skipped over some of that cortisol, right? It's not a cortisol steal, but from testosterone, our body's like, we don't really like to have this testosterone in here. We're going to just start turning it into estrogen.
Yep.
And this tends to be people that have BPA exposure, people that drink a lot.
Sure.
And people that have excess abdominal fat, right? That's where the aromatase gets upregulated. So, not only are you overweight, but you're also then turning your testosterone into estrogen, which without the testosterone, you're not going to be making lean muscle, right? So yeah, so it's such a spiral.
I love talking to doctors about this stuff because they can always, they give you the science version, but there's so much meat behind the actual substance,
Yeah.
Isn't he so smart?
Oh, man.
Isn't he so smart?
You're ready to just blow up, man. You're going to be on Ben Greenfield soon and all this other big.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, he knows his stuff. He loves his peptides for sure.
Loves his peptides. I'm starting to have, like, I hate to say it, like this love-hate thing with the biohacker community. I'm just like, there's not a device for everything, right? And not
That's
every
true.
device is the
Yeah.
best thing since sliced bread, you know,
Right.
like they're
Right.
wearing all this crazy stuff on their head and stuff. I'm
I
just
know.
like, to me, you get your hormones dialed in, you throw some peptides in there,
Yeah.
you're the ultimate biohacker, you know?
Yeah. And go outside, leave the
Totally.
devices inside. Like, yeah, my cousin lives in Colorado. He's been on the show before and led us through a meditation actually live, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
But he is the ultimate like anti-biohacker, I think, because he just leaves everything at home. I won't hear from him for like a month, and then he'll shoot me a text like, yeah, everything's good, and he'll just go out somewhere in Colorado and just live in the woods. It's awesome.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's got it all figured out.
He definitely, I enjoyed him as well. He definitely, I mean, you know, he's your cousin, so you know how far from the tree can the apple fall, right?
Little nepotism, never.
Little nepotism. Yeah. But you know, I guess, you know, I don't know if this qualifies as a layman's card, because it is a part of the topic, right? But we've mentioned a couple times the peptides and peptide therapy, and I think it will be a disservice to myself, because I have no idea what it is, but also most importantly, the people listening. So Josh, I'd love to kind of hear also maybe broader, like what your process is, right? If I walked or emailed you and say, hey, you know what, I'm interested about this peptide therapy, you know, what are the benefits, you know, who are the best targets for it? And
let me kind of give you my 30,000 foot view on peptides, and I combine hormones in it. And this is the easiest way for me to explain it to just my buddies that I'm having a beer with. You know, if hormones are the foundation of the home, the peptides are everything else that goes around it, and they're the decorations, they're the nice kitchen. Peptides do a lot of things, or hormones do a lot of things really, really well. Like having balanced testosterone is such a great foundation for a man and a woman, actually. That said, peptides are like the art that's in the house. They do specific things really well. And you have peptides ranging that help you with brain fog, to sex, to weight, to strength, to anti-aging. Insulin is the world's largest produced peptide, you know, that's been around for, Doc, how many years? 60, 70 years, you know? You have peptides flowing through your body, you know, 7,000 peptides. I think there's right now close to 60 FDA approved peptides. So they're now just making a really kind of big comeback. And I think a lot of this is due to the anti-aging aspect of it. But they're extremely effective. When you do it under medical supervision, they're extremely safe. And I like to call them high risk, low reward, or high reward, low risk type products, you know, especially if you're doing them under medical supervision. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of understanding, but they're chain of amino acids. That's all they are.
Yeah, I think that's like the best way to put it, is like amino acids, right? The building blocks for protein. You put a bunch of peptides together and you get a protein.
Yep.
And peptides, I think, you know, also how you store them and how you administer them are very important. Each peptide is given in a different way and needs to be stored usually in a colder temperature.
Yep.
Otherwise they're pretty heat labile, right? So they can denature, meaning you take the amino acids and pull them apart. So they don't really work as well in that case. But there are a couple of oral formats, but most of them are injection or intravenous.
Yep. That's exactly it. I have one of my favorite peptides.
Which one?
C-Max. It's a nasal spray. Have
you
tried that?
I haven't tried it personally, but it's a growth hormone analog, I believe, or a precursor. Right. So growth hormone helps us to grow. And so if you are already over the age of usually 22, we stop growing height wise. So I'm done, Jacky P. I'm never going to catch up to you. Josh, I don't know how tall you are. You're probably a tall guy. But
I'm 5'10", man. So
okay, I'm 5'9". I'm not too far.
We're close.
Yeah, we're not too far.
Look at you guys. Look at you guys.
The short brothers. Jacky P,
right.
how tall are you?
I'm 6'6". I'm saying the sun shines, so it's hard shining on me, baby. You know, because I'm above the clouds, you know?
He just pops up above the clouds for a minute and then pops back down.
Is there actually a decrease hormone? Because finding pants and clothes that fit me is a nightmare. I could drop down to like 6'4", 6'3", that you know, that sweet spot, you know?
What's going on, Maximal Beings? Doc Mock here. If you haven't done so already, leave us a comment and hit the subscribe button. Let your friends and family know. That way we can get the word out and continue to bash the bro science.